Hello! We are back. My name's Sarah Levon, and this is my sister Hannah. And we are here to share her postpartum experience. So if you haven't been following me, this is my channel. I've been on YouTube for like 2.5 years and do a lot of childbirth education and somewhat postpartum education. But we have been following her pregnancy and now birth journey. So we actually did a live a couple of weeks ago now. It's probably 2 weeks because this kid is 3 weeks old as of yesterday. Patience. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go over to Instagram and follow me at Bundle Birth, because that is where I am announcing when I'm going live, when I'm announcing new videos and new things coming. I answer your questions. I interact a lot more over there than I do here on YouTube, although I do try to follow. I definitely read all your comments. I get to them eventually. I can't respond to everybody, but I try to do my best with that. Okay, so this is Hannah. Welcome back, Hannah. So go over and watch her birth story if you haven't already. If you have already seen her birth story, which I know a lot of you, like 12,000 of you have already, let us know that you've seen her birth story. And we are so grateful and appreciative to you guys for following her journey. I know for us, we've talked a lot about how like your questions and your comments are so like inspiring and also give us great ideas for future content, and really are kind of like an honor that you care. So we're back to share her postpartum experience, what has happened. So she delivered on June 5th. I'm like, what day is today? And I have been here in Minnesota with them. They are from Ecuador, and they flew in right when the coronavirus stuff was happening, kind of on a whim. It was like, what, 6 hours and you had to be on a plane. Booked her flight, and they are here now. They've been here like 4 months-ish. Waiting to go back eventually. So we can talk about that. If you want to know about their travel plans, that was a question that I threw out in a poll over on Instagram. You can let us know. We can answer that. But so they're here. I'm here from LA, and I've been here since May 4th. Her due date was the 27th, waiting for the arrival of our nephew, my nephew, your son. And then I was supposed to go back on June 12th, which she delivered June 5th, which was way too fast. We were still sort of in crisis mode, which we're going to get to. And so I am still here. It is now June 28th, I think, or 29th. Not really sure. No, 28th, 7th. Whatever day it is. We never know. So I have been helping her. She did my entire birth coaching program as well to prep for labor and birth and postpartum. So we're going to talk about the things that she did. We're going to talk about her breastfeeding journey and some struggles that she had. We're going to talk about the hospital stay and how you navigated some great care and maybe some not so great care from your nursing team. And then what we've done for recovery at home, what we've done for sanity at home. We're going to talk about baby blues, how she's been feeling mentally and emotionally, what has surprised us. We have all your questions from Instagram. I actually wrote a bunch of them down, and so we're going to tell the story and talk through. And then the goal is to also teach you some things that you can learn for your own postpartum journey experience. Cool? So if you have any questions, you can throw those in the comment box down below. We will try to see them. I can kind of see some of your comments going in and out. Somebody just asked about visitors during COVID, stuff like that. So we can answer your questions live. And then also we have them from Instagram. So without further ado, let's get started, Hannah. So I'm going to prompt you, I guess. So you delivered June 5th. And all went well, and then baby was skin to skin in labor and delivery, and then that's when your breastfeeding journey began.
Yeah, so...
And I'm going to turn off the AC thing while you talk.
Okay. Yeah, so baby was born, and then I felt like right after, but like it was kind of like a lot. People doing this and that, and like baby getting things done to him, and like being with me and then not, and then... had the first breastfeeding in the labor and delivery room, and someone just kind of, one of the nurses just kind of like grabbed my boob and shoved it in his mouth and was like, yeah, you should breastfeed, and like, and then kind of did it on the other side, and I was pretty out of it and like felt like there was a lot going on.
I also felt like it was a tiny bit forced and rushed.
Like, yeah, just kind of like, we're breastfeeding now, boom, chunk. And then I'm just like, oh, okay,
whoa,
we're breastfeeding.
Yeah. Like you'd barely gotten your head around like, whoa, this is my baby.
Yeah, like have a baby. And then, boom, we're doing this, which was a little bit like, do we have to breastfeed right now is kind of what was in my mind, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, like, it was just so much, you know what I mean? You're just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of overwhelming right after, I feel like. And so, yeah, just like, okay, I guess this is normal. We're going to breastfeed right now, right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, there definitely wasn't education, like, for that first breastfeeding. It was just kind of like, we're doing it for you.
Shove the boob.
Shove the boob in. Okay, we're shoving it over here. Great, he fed. He had his first breastfeeding, and I'm like,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
And then they kind of were just doing other things, and they're like, okay, we're gonna move you to the postpartum room. And so I got in a wheelchair. We put our masks on because we're in COVID.
Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
So just so you guys know that a lot of times I see right after birth, moms actually being the one like baby skin to skin, and they're like, oh, I need to breastfeed. Should I, here's my boob. And honestly, guys, unless you have gestational diabetes or your baby is large for gestational age or small for gestational age, meaning like big or small basically, then you really don't have to breastfeed that fast. Now, when we look at success rates for breastfeeding and baby-friendly hospitals, which I think was what was going on with you, just from the nursing perspective, that they want the baby to eat within the first hour of life, ideally. And once you're recovered, like your recovery is done, the bed's put back together, your repair is done because you did tear a little bit, like in a few minutes, probably 25, 30 minutes. And so that might have been the stress that the nurse was feeling to get the baby on the boob. Now, mind you, if you try to force a baby on the boob when they are not ready, then you get a baby that's like, and you're like, well, my baby doesn't want my boob and my baby doesn't want to breastfeed and maybe they don't like me or whatever. And all these things come out that are so unnecessary and totally not true. So I always say my rule for breastfeeding is let them be skin to skin, which baby was uninterrupted. And that's the first step to successful breastfeeding. And then as they start to get ready and they have to go through this whole process in their brain, that helps them to be like, oh, okay, now I'm kind of like, oh, what's this thing? Let me find the breast almost on my own, which is called the breast crawl. You can Google it, it's really cool. And then you have up to 5 hours before they truly need to eat. But the goal is eat them when they're ready and when they're showing those signs. Eat them. Don't eat your baby. Feed them when you're showing signs. So it probably doesn't need to be like a get the baby on. But from a nursing perspective, it was probably like they want them to eat in that first hour of life. She had a moment, let me get the baby on. It's a little bit checklisty. And it's like you're so out of it in that time to do a ton of breastfeeding education. I always do it when I'm at the bedside, whether as a nurse or as a labor support person, birth coach. But honestly, you don't remember much anyway. So it's almost like, let's just get this baby fed and then we can do this once you've like recovered and feel a little better. That's my 2 cents on that. Keep going.
Yeah, so then got in the wheelchair and like people helped me. So like if you didn't watch the birth story, had a vaginal birth. I had like a small tear, but like people got me up and I was like walking with help.
And you had an epidural, so your epidural had worn off about that 2-hour markish.
Yeah, and then they got me into the wheelchair and got my gown back on.
She was naked. If you saw that, she was Miss Naked.
And then we put our masks on and went to a postpartum room with all of our stuff. So like they have these like little carts at least at this hospital where you like packed up all your stuff. And postpartum room was definitely a lot smaller than the labor room. Is that typical?
Yes, that's very typical.
Like, I was like, oh, we're really smunched in here.
Yeah, smunched.
Like, whoa. But, I mean, whatever. And then, yeah, I got, like, first nurse that was there kind of did, like, an orientation to the postpartum room, which was, like, a lot of the things were similar to the labor and delivery room, but, like, you know, bed and same like chart thing up there and whatever.
And they have a bassinet there that you can put the baby in. So that's also a common question that I get of where do we put the baby? And they have like a little crib thing on wheels. It's not really a crib, it's a bassinet. And then they can roll that around and that's where your baby can go when you're not holding them.
Yeah. And then you were still on or you got back on?
I got back on, I think. You packed up, I got offline because I was on virtual support the whole time, and then I got back on once they got into the postpartum room.
Yeah, and kind of got settled there, and then you were kind of we like tried breastfeeding again and did some breastfeeding education, right?
Mm-hmm. But you were falling asleep. Like
Yeah,
I
I was
knew
so out of
you wouldn't remember a single thing. And virtual breastfeeding support for me, I'll be totally honest, was not easy.
No,
And
it wasn't super necessarily helpful either because it
Yeah.
was like you couldn't like help put, and then it's hard to like explain in like over a line like,
yeah,
oh,
I'm like,
move the
okay,
baby
move your
down,
hand
move your hand
this way. So
do
you're
it this,
doing it
and it's
this
like-
way. And she's like, ah, it was very
It
awkward.
was really weird. And then I was kind of, I think both of us realized like this isn't really gonna work. You're gonna have to like help me once I'm home.
Yeah.
And so like in my mind I was like, which is not typical for people generally. I mean, you don't have Sarah that you're coming home to. It's like awesome at breastfeeding support and all that stuff too. But yeah, I was definitely like, okay, that didn't really work. So like the nurse that was there was kind of helping a little bit.
She was present. There was a nurse there. And typically, guys, your nurses should help you with breastfeeding because once you go to the postpartum area, your goal is to figure out your newborn, rest, and breastfeed if you choose to breastfeed. So it was like, it had been a couple of hours. He was kind of looking for it. You were ready to feed. The nurse was saying you should feed. And so we did some of that education, but you were so tired that I was just like, this is not really worth it, like at this point. And that was my job to like identify that like it's probably just too much information for your brain right now to like take in. So let's try to get the baby on. And then the nurse was in the room. And so she jumped in and I was like, oh, thank God. I didn't even know she was in there because I was on the iPad. And so I couldn't only see like right in front of my face. And so I was like, oh, can you hear him? Oh, so sweet. And so I was like, oh my God, thank you. Like, you know, jump in there. And she grabbed the breast and like was doing what I was trying to tell her to do. And we sort of got the baby on at that point.
Yeah, I think that first one in postpartum went okay, and like I think that he got some food.
Got some food. So what's a normal first feed for a newborn? What did you learn?
Like how long?
How much?
Or
How much do they normally get? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay, so the normal is drops, guys. And I think that's like hard when if you've ever been around a breastfeeding mama, that like you see all this milk pouring out of you, that you originally start with a very, very small amount of breast milk, like milliliters only, okay? And so that's normal. That's how much they need. Their tummies are super tiny. It's okay. It's super nutrient dense, but that can be really stressful for people when they're not seeing milk really. But if baby latches and sucks and then they kind of satisfy and fall asleep, like you can sort of assume that they're getting it. And this is what you were in the hospital for nursing support. So baby latched that time. The nurse helped. I was like, thank God. And I was like, okay, this virtual thing, like I can answer questions and stuff, but like you're gonna have to ask for help during your feeds because I was like, I have to grab the boob, I have to see the mouth and move the camera here. Honestly, that piece for me, just to be totally candid, was very awkward. And I can labor support, birth support, and kind of tell the partner what to do, but it was like because you were super tired, you had all the postpartum hormones going, which it's like the down of the adrenaline. Normally you're like really awake right after birth, and then you get hit with this like, I want to die.
I barely remember any of this. Like it's so like, what was happening? And I know I remember us being like, well, that didn't work very well. And then you got off because Sarah had been on with me
for
the
days.
whole labor
like
online.
3 days.
And so we were like, go to sleep. We're going to try to sleep. Like, and yeah, so then we didn't really have you on much like for the rest of the postpartum time. And like, I definitely remember being super out of it, being like super tired. It's like that. Yeah. Like, oh, like the adrenaline, yeah, baby. And then it was just like
yeah,
I just want to sleep. I'm so out of it. And then, yeah, and then it was like just trying to sleep. I don't even remember what time of day or anything any of this happened.
It all becomes a postpartum blur.
Yeah, like we had different nurses coming in, and like definitely, I feel like you probably said like, hey, ask for help at the feeds and whatever. And I think like you're just so out of it that like that's definitely something I think someone asked like, what would you want to be prepared for with postpartum, or what, I don't know, what would you have done differently? And I definitely think like I would have been like, okay, like kind of me, I like needed to track more with when he fed, because like I was so out of it. It was just like, when did he last do that? And like I was trying to write things down, but like bleh, you're just like so out of it. And then I'd be like, I think I need to like feed him, and then I just like try, and like a number of times I just tried by myself, like right at the very beginning, without the nurse's help, and it was just like, felt just so awkward. Like, he's all floppy as like a newborn, and then you're just like trying to get your boob inside of his mouth, and like you have no idea what you're doing, and you're so tired. And it was like, then there was a shift change, and this new nurse came on, and she came in when I was trying to feed, and she was like, oh, let me help you. And she stayed through the whole thing, and she like helped me. And then she was like, you know what, I don't think he's like latching, let's try to do like manual expression, where like she was just like squishing my boob to like get it out. And like she was like, you have so much milk, this is great. And like filled little spoons, and like we put like a little spoon like in his mouth with breast milk. And she was like, that was like a great feed, he got enough, this is a great feed, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, that was super helpful. Felt like I was kind of learning, but also just like needed someone to like literally like, she was the one smushing my boob to get the milk out, because I was like, you're just so awkward. Like, if you've never done it, it's like, how do I smush my boob to get it out? And like I would try to smush it and nothing would come out, and like, just like,
and then she'd grab it and be like,
yeah, and it just like, and I was like, oh my gosh,
I have milk.
there's milk out there. So that was like, felt really good. And then the next, I'm just kind of going with the breastfeeding.
Yeah,
But, like,
the breastfeeding
next
was a big
time-
one for you.
That I tried to breastfeed, so that nurse left. She had a really short shift, and I was like really sad, because there were some shifts that were just like from like 7 or something. And then the next nurse I really didn't feel very comfortable with, and so it was like, and then I just felt weird. Like, should I be asking them to help me, or like, is this part of their job? And like,
It is, by the way.
and like, so I like didn't ask for help and was just like struggling, and like would be there for like 40 minutes trying to like get him to eat, and it would just be like, he's not doing anything, I don't know if I should keep going.
And the issue was he was super sleepy,
yeah,
right?
he, like,
That's
wouldn't
why
wake
he
up.
wouldn't latch.
Yeah, it was like, he's just asleep. Like, come on, do something. And so definitely like looking back on it, like I need to just like put my call light every time that I was thinking of feeding, and just like actually have them help me and be like, I need help me. But I think like as a patient, like I didn't really know that, and it was more like Sarah was like, why didn't you ask for more help later? And I'm like, I
Or
don't
call
know.
me.
Right.
Here I am sleeping, having the best sleep of my life, like passed out. And I'm
And
like,
I'm just like, they're super discouraged.
right. And I get a phone call from you like hours later, and you're like, yeah, he hasn't latched for like 9 hours, and we manually expressed, and now we're syringe feed. And I was just like, what? In me, I'm like, wait a second. What? I just assumed everything was good because I didn't hear anything. But that's also for you support people out there. That is one of my rules, though, for like as a support person in postpartum, that you end up in like postpartum land and you don't really necessarily realize. And so I'll check in, but I also, there's this fine line between being a nuisance and being like another thing for you to do when you're so focused on just trying to figure things out. And so that's where, like, you know, looking back, I as my sister, I was like, hello, I would have reached out, but I was sleeping and I didn't know you were struggling. But, you know, I think for those of you especially who don't have a support person like me, you know, and you don't have anybody to reach out to, that your nurses, their job is to help you feel successful leaving the hospital, at least to have had some successful feeds, know what you're doing, have the resources available. And it is sort of on you. I mean, if you watch part 1 with her birth story, like somebody reflected and she's like, what I learned from this is that I need to advocate for myself. And you do. You absolutely do.
And same, definitely, I feel like in postpartum, maybe like, not more, but like it seemed like the nurses had more to do and more patients, and then there were
Which
like
is true.
CNAs who were like also helping that could do certain things, and so like it felt a little bit more like, because in labor and delivery people would be like, okay, now you're on Pitocin, so like you're my only patient or whatever. And granted, they have to do charting and they have to do other stuff, they're not like next to you the entire time, but it does feel like you're my nurse, and like you are tracking with me a lot, and it felt a little bit more like they were tracking with a lot of people, which
Yeah,
I don't
they
know if
didn't have
that's
as much
true.
time for you, maybe.
And so it felt like,
Which is
well,
true.
I don't
They
wanna,
have
like,
up
be
to
a
4
nuisance.
patients. Yeah. And that's 4 meaning mom and baby, so 8 patients.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think it was just that, and then you were like, hey, reach out to ask to talk to a lactation specialist or whatever, And so it did that. And then when she came in, like, so that was the next, because he delivered in the morning, and then that was the next morning, I guess. That was super good because she was like, so they have like a whole like team of people, and like most hospitals, I would assume.
Yes, most
like,
hospitals have a lactation team that you can ask to see if they don't already see you automatically.
Yeah, so like I asked to see them, they're like, okay, great, we'll like have her stop by, and she came by. Granted, like also there's a whole like, you're so exhausted, at least for me, like I was so exhausted. And so then like, for instance, when she came in, I'd just been sleeping, and she's like, hi, I'm this, and I'm lactation, and then I was just like trying to wake up, and you're like so sleep deprived.
Yeah.
But it was like, because Sarah was like, I'd love to like be on for that or whatever on virtual, and I like text her after, I was like, it already happened. I couldn't even handle getting you on. I was so tired and just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But that was super encouraging. I actually like cried with her because like she was just super encouraging and like taught me and like sat there with me and did another feed that was like, okay, that was a good feed. And so like I knew like, okay, now we've like done another good feed, because like I hadn't really felt like he'd gotten much since like the one where like the night before where the nurse
A whole
helped
night
me.
before. Yeah, that's stressful.
Yeah, and it was very stressful. I was like, is he just like gonna like, I don't know, starve?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, and that's a super common concern that women have, that they're starving their baby. And that's why I also remind you that your baby needs drops at these feeds, guys. If you get a good latch, which is the goal, and even for you, what ended up happening was at this point you actually latched him with the lactation consultant?
Yeah.
Okay, so he latched on the breast, but pretty much all the other feeds
were like spoon or syringe.
Were spoon or syringe fed to the baby. And so this is where I think this is such a good teaching moment for you guys to know that just because the baby's either too sleepy or you're not getting a good latch right away, that there are alternatives to still feeding your baby breast milk, and you still can successfully breastfeed. That it is super normal for breastfeeding to start out rough, and for that to like be a struggle. It's like your second labor a lot of times. And this is why having a support team of people you can call, and I will link my people down below. They're Goldilocks, they're amazing, and they do virtual from anywhere. So you already have that if needed for your lifeline, but also your hospitals, a lot of them have resources. They talk to you about this whole center thing, that you need your resources around you for that help, like you do for labor and birth. And so that's where like this is very common. And when you have a sleepy baby, this is also one of the questions, how did you deal with a sleeping baby? Is first of all, once we got home, we'll talk about that too. Once I was here, I was like, let me wake him up. And you're like, whoa, you're so like aggressive with him. And I was like, I'm not aggressive, I'm just assertive. Like, we got to wake him up, you know? And so I think also like recognizing how to wake up a baby, which I'll tell you what I did. And then second of all, that you manually expressed the breast milk into a spoon, and then either spoon fed or syringe fed. And actually, I'll show you the syringe that we used. I'll grab it when she's talking in a second, to show you that like we used this, and meaning we actually did this at home for the first feed as well, in order to give him the nutrition and still also work on milk supply. And then also like you can't force somebody to suck when they're sleeping, you know, like if you force, like if you put a sandwich in my mouth, yeah, true. Yeah. Like he'll swallow even if he's sleeping, but if you put a sandwich in my mouth when I'm sleeping, I'm not going to like chew on it and swallow it. Like I'm like eating a full meal, you know, I might, but if you drop some droplets of water in my mouth, I might like swallow in my sleep, right? Same thing, but not the same thing. And so there are alternative ways to feed your baby, and you can still breastfeed, but this is the flex and flow of the postpartum experience, especially for those of you who are breastfeeding. And you may need to fight for it. That means advocacy in the hospital, asking for help, asking to see a lactation consultant, having your team on board for home, which we'll get to, and really reaching out to those specialists. And a lot of the work that is done in those consults is just confidence building. And that's especially what I think you experienced, of like, okay, I can do this. Whereas when you're alone in a room, isolated, trying to get the baby on, and they're crying or they're sleeping.
And your husband wants to help, but like they don't know either. Like, I was like, you try squishing it and see if something gets out. Because when I'm here alone trying to squish it like they were squishing it, nothing's coming out. And, like, that's just discouraging when you're like, okay, yeah, like, there's milk in there. They've been telling me, you know, like, it'll all work out. And then you're there like, ah.
Yeah.
And also, like, the lactation specialist told me, like, hey, like, don't try for 40 minutes to get him latched. Like, that's just too much effort. Like, try to get him latched for, like, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he doesn't, then you need to, like, manual express or pump
Mm-hmm.
and then get it into him. And, like, don't worry that he didn't latch that time. Like, just try again the next time. Instead of, like, I was literally, like, just spending so much time just trying to get him latched. And then you're so tired and you should be sleeping. And, like, you need to, like, recover.
Yeah.
And so it's just, like, so exhausting, too. Because, like, also another piece of, like, being exhausting is there's all these people coming in. There's a nurse, there's a CNA, then during the day, there's doctors and an electrician specialist, your doctor, baby doctor, this doctor, the baby doing this, and it's just, like, you get to sleep, and then, like, the next second, someone's already in there asking you questions or telling you things, and it's, like, and I have no clue what most of them said.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Because you're just
And
so
this,
tired.
guys, is a widespread problem, okay? I hear this from my clients constantly, and I mean, in the hospital, we know that, like, limiting interruptions is a thing, but this is where you will have to advocate for yourself, that especially, like, if you're feeding and you plan on napping, which you need to prioritize that, we'll get to that too, that you call your nurse while you're feeding and say, look, when I'm done here, your nurse, by the way, is like your gatekeeper. Like, they organize your care team. They, like, you know, they, like, tell when they need something, they send the people in. And so you can ask them, look, I'm feeding. When I'm done here, my number one priority is to sleep. And so if you need to do something, if I need a medication, if you need a set of vital signs, if you need something done with the baby, can we plan to do it right now and or right after I'm done feeding? And then I want no interruptions for the next 2 hours or the next 3 hours. And then you can ask them to put a sign on your door. Do not enter without speaking to the nurse first. A lot of hospitals actually have this, like, as a laminated option for their doors.
Wow.
And then and this is where, like, we didn't even talk about this stuff, and she has me. But this was like, I didn't even know what was going on because she didn't reach out and I was sleeping and recovering. And then next thing I knew, I'm like, hold on. Okay, we need to fix all of this, you know? But I mean, how am I supposed to know anything if you don't tell me? But how is she supposed to tell me when she's, like, doesn't even know what day it is?
Right, and, like, you don't know what time it is, and, like, we had the blinds closed, and so it was just, like, I have no clue how much this passed.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, like, they gave me this, like, log book, like, log the diapers and log, like, the feedings, and, like, so I was trying to log it, and, like, I'd forget, and it's just, like, like, this whole blur.
Yeah. Now, mind you, here's my suggestion for logging is we've been using the app Nara Baby. So I can also link this down below once this is published and processed. We had it all set up, and remember how many times I was like, just use your app, and you're like, no, it's just easier with the logbook, like, it's just here or whatever. And so that would be something that maybe next time, like, you would start with the app, do you think?
Yeah, but I needed to, like, get on, like, I had the app, or did I not?
No, you had the app, but you just, every time I suggested it, you were like, it's just easier with the paper and whatever, like.
Well, I thought that someone else was wanting to see the paper, and they never wanted to see it. Like, somehow when they were telling me about the log, I got it in my head that they were going to someone was going to come and look at this log.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I need to write it down so they can see that I'm writing
Which
it
they
down.
could always pull up the app, and you could just say, here you go, if you need
Yeah.
it, which because they may want to chart it, but you could always be like, here's my app, and they'll be like, okay, and they can write it down on their paper and be done with it.
Yeah, I think, using that probably would have been better.
Now she's still using an app.
Yeah, I'm using that now, and that's super helpful, because it's like, how are you supposed to remember, like, every day? Like, if I don't put it in the app, then I, like, have no clue still even. Like, has it been an hour? Has it been 3 hours?
Yeah.
Has it been 4 hours?
And how long has he been on my boob? Like 5 minutes or 20 minutes or
Yeah.
whatever. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
definitely
so
recommend it.
you were logging that and then asking for help in the hospital, and then you had a nurse that was very helpful, other ones that were maybe less than helpful. Any other comments about your hospital experience that you would want them to know that would be tips to make it easier? People coming and going. Anything else?
took a bath in the bathtub. That was super nice, and they had like salts that they had left in there, and that was super nice and like relaxing and also like soothing down there after the tear. And I actually been still doing that, less frequent now, but having baths with like salts, that's been really good. That was definitely like a high.
So, and that answers the question of like pericare, which we'll talk about your routine for how you've been taking care of your vagina. But you can get in the bath, and this would be what we call a sitz bath. So if you've heard of that before, there are like actual sitz baths where like basically you just put water in a dish and like drape your vagina over it. Drape your vagina? That sounds bad. Like you like linger your vagina in the water, but you can just get in the water and soak your vag. That helps to bring circulation, helps with healing. The Epsom salts are going to be really nice for healing as well, and soothing. If you have like an inflamed, uncomfortable vagina, that can be really soothing. So you started that in the hospital. We've still done that here. Also, it's just good for relaxation and some like alone time to decompress. And you can do that almost right away.
Yeah, I thought of another thing. So they like had me on a routine of like pain meds, just like normal, like what would it be? Like Tylenol in motion or whatever. From the beginning, just for like pain for that. But they weren't keeping track. Sorry, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But I'd be like, I'm in a lot of pain, and I'd look on like the whiteboard, and both of the meds were completely out of my system. Like they weren't keeping much track of it. And so something else I would have like that I would do over is I would set a timer, because if both of the meds ran out at that point, it was very uncomfortable and like painful and like what's happening, and then it'd be like, oh, I need meds, and then of course you're waiting for the meds to kick in, and like you have to call the nurse, she has to come and get them for you, and blah blah blah. So like I would have just set a timer and like put meds on it, because also like I tried to set timers and I'd be like, why did I set this timer? And like because I didn't put a label on it. And just like call my nurse, like call her right at the mark. And like no, because they put like every 6 hours, but then it'd be 7, 8, 9 hours.
Well, and this is the nursing perspective, and this is why in my class I have to say that this was mentioned. Mind you, how are you ever supposed to remember all of this stuff, right? And so but instead of, they have a lot of times the orders for PRN, which is as needed for the medications. And my recommendation is for at least the first 48 hours to take them completely around the clock. But you have to make this very clear with your nurse. Don't want these as needed. I want them around the clock, no matter what, as a scheduled med, because it's how it's ordered in the computer. If it's ordered in the computer as around the clock, then they get an alert, they're like aware, and then it's considered late, and you can like get written up for that kind of stuff. So that's where they can get by with maybe not giving it around the clock. So that's why you have to ask for it and then say, will you schedule it so that I made sure to get it around the clock?
Yeah.
Or set a timer for yourself.
And I think, like, what I would have probably, because, like, this stuff, like, there's just, like, no way that your brain is remembering that, like, if you went over it in that moment. And so, like, I maybe would, like, write down a few of those things and have maybe, like, your card for, like, when you get to postpartum, like, hey.
Let's make them a handout.
Yeah.
Let's do, we're going to make you a postpartum cheat sheet that you can pull out in postpartum. And it'll be on my website. We'll make it super affordable and super cute. And then it'll have all of your references for the postpartum period of like, ask for this. I already have a lot of this stuff in my birth coaching program. So I'll just summarize it, and you can have it there. And then when in doubt, make sure you pull it out. And then when in doubt, pull it out. And then that would be easy for you. Yeah? We like it? I see some, oh yes. She says, or free. I do a lot of things for free, guys, so I'll consider it. Or I'll just give it for free, like as a promo or as like an incentive for this live or something. Okay, so, or yeah, stay tuned. We'll think about it. I'll make something to have available as like a handout.
Yeah, because I think that was helpful with labor and delivery, having like your birth preferences, which was something that you have on your website too, but like having it, then it was there, and every nurse could go see it, even if I was not at the place where I could, tell them what my birth
Mhm.
preferences were because I'm struggling through contractions. So I think it's the same thing with postpartum, which is a great idea of just, I'm not at a place, like I'm just so exhausted to tell every
Mhm.
nurse this is what I want, or this, or even in the beginning, like,
Yeah.
just like, I just had a baby and like you're not thinking of anything, like
Right.
your meds, like
Right.
that's the last thing I'm thinking of.
Right. Yeah. We
Yeah.
will put that together for you.
Cool.
I see a lot of yeses.
Perfect.
That's fun.
So yeah,
Cool.
I mean, with hospital, I think that like take advantage of the resources you have, especially like I was coming home Sarah, so like I had a huge resource at home, so like we actually were like really pushing to, like leave. We were like, we want to get out of here,
Like
because
hilariously pushing.
like I had my shoes on, my clothes on, was sitting up, and like they hadn't discharged
and
me
we
yet.
had talked about this so much that like when she got to postpartum, it was, we want to leave as soon as possible. Can you set us up for discharge? And every time I talk to her, I'm like, have they given you your discharge instructions? Make sure they do this. Like, because you have to really, if you really want to go home early, there's a lot of check boxes from your nurses. And so like you want to be on top of them that they're doing as much of that ahead of time as possible.
Yeah.
And he was circumcised, and so they were waiting on the circumcision and the 24-hour newborn testings and all of that. And so literally like your bags were packed by the door with her shoes on, like waiting, like, can we go now?
Are we ready?
Yeah. So they definitely felt the push, and you guys ended up out of the hospital. It was like 26 or 7 hours after delivery. No, it was
No, it was
later than that.
He was born at 10:39 a.m. and we left at like 3 p.m. the next
Yeah,
day.
so like 30 plus hours. So even then, when you're asking for early discharge, which is, you really should be in the hospital for about 24 hours. Some pediatricians will let you leave earlier than that if you want, so you can talk to your doctors about that. But it's a 24-hour mark is usually like the golden standard as long as everything's looking good. And so, even then, after pushing them and planning ahead and
like,
all the things.
I was mentioning it like very regularly. Like,
Yeah.
we want to get out of here as soon as we can, especially once the morning came where it was like, it's go time with everybody's in here, like all the pediatricians are here and, lactation, all the different things. Like, and all the doctors here and you're seeing all these people. It's like, the baby's going to testing and you're like, okay, we're moving. And it's like, hey,
Right.
Are we on track? Hey, are we on track? And like, they had a thing that was like, by 1 p.m. was like the goal with like the time we delivered. So I was like, are we ready to get out at 1? Like, I was like checking in. Granted, it's still like 3, but
Yeah.
Someone asked about pain in the hospital bed. The hospital bed was so uncomfortable, like compared to bed here. Like I remember getting home and being like, oh my word, these beds are so comfortable.
Yeah.
Hospital beds are not that comfortable.
Mhm.
And the pillows are very squishy, like
Yes.
flat.
Yeah. They're like plastic.
But yeah, so that's what I would say about the hospital. Then we left, and that we had the gift cards for which is in your hospital packing list.
Mm-hmm.
That was so fun. We gave gift cards to like especially the nurses that we like really liked in labor delivery and in postpartum, and then we gave it to like the lactation specialist, even though we didn't see her again, like because I remembered her first name, and so I just asked the nurse like, could you get this to her? She's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We actually gave one to the first charge nurse because she helped us out with different things. So it's just super fun to like be able to do something nice for people that you especially connected with, or that like, for instance, the nurse had just sat there with me and like be able to be like, thanks so much for the breastfeeding help, and like just super fun to be able to bless them. And of course all of them are like, oh, you don't have to do
They're very
this. And,
Minnesota
like,
courteous.
yeah,
I was like,
oh
no, it's totally fine.
But yeah,
That
it's just
accent.
so fun, and I feel like good as like a patient to feel like you can like give something back to people, especially that treated you really well,
Yeah.
or that went the extra mile for you, or that you felt really comfortable with. Even like the pediatrician that did the circumcision, she was just like really great, and we were like, let's give one to her, and like we barely connected, like we barely did anything with her, but she was just like made us feel really comfortable, and yeah, so.
Yeah, and a lot of times your nurses sometimes get things, but it's all those ancillary people like the pediatrician or the lactation person, like they're a lot of times forgotten. And so to be able to bless them is always fun. We're a very generous family, so that's always fun for us, myself included.
So then we drove home with baby in the car seat and got here, and actually Josh's, my husband's parents were here. So people actually asked at the beginning of the live about visitors. So with COVID, we had 0 visitors in the hospital, which this is my first kid, so like I don't really know the difference.
Including me.
Yeah, so like Sarah didn't go. My parents, his parents, nobody was there, waiting in the waiting room or anything. So yeah, we did get online and like show him to like both of our parents, which was really fun. And then his parents had drove here and were here to receive us. And so yeah, we got home.
How did you make that decision about visitors and who gets to see and hold the baby versus limiting other people?
Like since then too?
Yeah, like because they
Yeah,
came.
so yeah, we just kind of like with COVID and everything, it's like really hard. But we kind of were like drew the line at, granted, we're living right now with my parents and with Sarah. So it was like obviously they're gonna like touch the baby, hold the baby, be with
Right.
us. Like we're a
And we'd been
household.
quarantined with them forever.
Right. But yeah, we just were kind of like, it's crazy to not have Josh's parents like meet their grandson and hold him was like our feeling of like, granted someone else could be like, no, nobody can hold that. And that's okay. But we were kind of like, well, we live with my parents, so we really want his parents to also like be able to hold him and like meet him and stuff. So they came up right away. But we drew it at that. So like Josh's siblings haven't met him yet. None of our friends have like met him or hold him or anything. We'd be okay with social distancing. Granted, like a lot of our friends and family aren't living right here too. But yeah, so that's kind of like specifically with COVID. We're thinking about like, okay, if we like open it up for anyone else to hold him, it would, it would probably be like Josh's siblings next.
Mm-hmm.
And then like maybe but we kind of were talking with Sarah about like after he's vaccinated and stuff like that, like at that point opening it up to potentially just like a few more people. Just because with COVID you don't really know, and it's hard, like the bigger circle that you have, and like with the newborn being vulnerable to COVID and to other things, to everything.
Mind you, this is something that everybody's going to have to navigate on their own as far as what they choose and how they choose to protect themselves. I think it's also good to recognize, I think it's easy to start thinking that like everybody has COVID. Like if you interact with anyone, you're going to get COVID. And that's not the case. Okay. So that's also, it's being wise about the people you're exposing yourself to, staying outdoors, staying within like good wind area, like not enclosed areas, staying socially distanced, wearing a mask if you're going out and about, stuff like that we have very much been doing. And up until recently, like we were disinfecting our packages and our groceries and like it was all the things. So we've sort of loosened up a little bit since then. But either way, that like they made the executive decision that they would take the risk of allowing Josh's parents to come and hold the baby. No one's going to keep that as an illegal thing. And that's the risk that you get to make for yourself. But past that, it was like, you know what, this is where we draw the line and where we're going from there. So anyway, all right. So you're home and we all met the baby, which was very emotional and sweet. He was such a little peanut. Now he's getting so big. Not that big. He's still not even 8 pounds, but he was very small. And mind you, getting home with the breastfeeding, let's go back to the breastfeeding. So prior to that, I find out that they were having breastfeeding issues. He wasn't really latching. She had a good session with the lactation consultant without me that I also didn't know happened. And then she was like, we just got to get home. We just got to get home. Like this was too much, whatever. And all I knew was they hadn't latched the baby. They were mostly syringe feeding and that he was really sleepy. So, and we knew at this point that the jaundice level was intermediate high. So in the hospital, they do a test, like a forehead test, to check for the jaundice level, which is the yellowing of baby's skin due to an immature liver. I have already filmed a YouTube video series on jaundice. So it'll be all about jaundice and then how to use your Billy Light at home, because we did end up doing Billy Lights at home. So I will also have an Instagram post about this. There's YouTube video coming. Thank you. And so but we knew that we were in the range where easily we could tip into jaundice becoming a problem. And so I knew we hadn't fed on the breast, which in order to get rid of the jaundice, you have to feed. That the key is you have to stimulate the gut, you have to increase the milk volume. He needs more volume in his bowel to excrete the jaundice that causes the yellowing of the skin. So it was very much on my nursey radar. I had like this whole plan, set up the whole downstairs, which we can talk about as far as like your stations and how we've set up the home to be conducive to your postpartum experience. But I knew this going into it. And so they were bonding with with baby. Everybody is, and meeting baby and whatever. Mind you, I had come here, and honestly, I have to be honest, I was expecting to be like totally baby centric and like obsessed with baby. But when you came home, of course, like I wanted to see him and was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute and tiny and blah, blah, blah. But I was very preoccupied with your well-being, Hannah. And that was a surprise to me, where I was like go mode. And I was like, okay, this is this, and we need that, and we need this, and we'll move here, and we'll get this ready. And so I had set up the bathroom, and actually I have a story highlight on my Instagram called Dakota. That's his name. And I have shared a bunch of little tips that we've been doing live and in that. So if you haven't seen that, go over to YouTube or to Instagram. It's on a story highlight over at Bundle Birth. And I showed our downstairs space. So I started with the bathroom. There was a station with all of her postpartum like peri-care supplies. There was a station for breastfeeding, so she could lay down. We ended up moving one and also having a sitting up breastfeeding station with all her supplies and snacks and water and a heating pad for her cramps. And then eventually I moved downstairs, actually, for sleeping. So we'd set up the whole downstairs, you get home, and then we had that first feed. Right? That like it was time for him to eat, and I hadn't been hands-on with the two of them yet, and so I needed to see what was going on, and what I saw was a sleepy baby. So how many of you guys who are postpartum had the sleepy baby thing? And this is extremely normal. The reason for that is that babies, when they're born, they have all of mom's hormones in them. They've been sharing blood, not totally sharing, but like sharing blood. And so your baby has a bunch of your melatonin, which is our sleepy hormone, in their system, and they need to work that out. So that's why during that first 24 hours, they're typically really sleepy. Now, he also had been circumcised, and they actually, because of the breastfeeding stuff, typically after a circumcision, baby's gonna be extra sleepy. So we were already double whammy sleepy baby here. And so they had actually asked you if you wanted to wait on the circumcision because of how sleepy he was, because of the feeds. And that phone call I did get. And I was like, nope, just get it done. Be done and over with. You have me, we'll figure it out. If I have to milk you myself, which I did, like I will milk you myself and we will be fine, because she had me. So I will also acknowledge that like not everybody has this kind of postpartum support. And so we'll give you still some takeaways, and this is obviously just her experience. So where was I with that? So we go to feed, and he was super sleepy. So that's when I'm seeing, okay, I manually expressed. There were little drops of milk. You're not going to see a full stream like you would now. She could like practically hit me in the face with her milk from here. But back then it's just like a little bit of drop. And then it's like, okay, cool. We have milk. Let's start there. Number 2 is we have a sleepy baby. So how do we wake this baby up? So what we did was we stripped off all the clothes, sat him up, burped him, I changed him, I talked to him and play with him, and hey baby, blah, 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 you're so cute, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of like, but was still just like, ugh, I'm so sleepy. So then we tried, and he kind of like, nah, nah, on the boob, but otherwise like was not interested. And so we tried for probably 10 minutes, and that is my cutoff. If you have a sleepy baby, try for 10. If he's too sleepy, then we went to plan B, which was manually expressing and then turning that into a syringe and feeding baby that way, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. We tried for 10 minutes, and then we were like, nope, it's not working. So then we talked manual expression. Now, mind you, again, if you are a support person that supports people in the postpartum period, I hope this is extra helpful for you as well, to not waste your energy. And my job and my thought process is, she's so tired. Okay, they finally got home, they're in their own space, they're decompressing. For me, it's survival mode. We had a lot of things going on. There was a lot of things against her breastfeeding situation, that my goal was not to teach her all the things breastfeeding, get her independent. My goal was, let's feed the baby. Like, let's get some milk, let's establish some things, and if I have to latch him myself every feed, I will, which is what I did for the first 2 days. So that's where prioritizing, that was my thought process of, rather than trying to teach you all the things, and she wouldn't have retained any of it anyway.
No, and like I was so emotional too, and like so like just crying and like out of it / then crying and like crying at stupid things. Like Sarah showed me a picture of milk ducts in your boob on Google, and I was like, I like started crying. I was like, wow, my body, and like
it's so true.
It's so weird.
Yep. And like literally everything, it would be like, oh, we'd see him with like dad or something. And be like, ah. And mind you, I will say too that I was very affected by her hormones. I am not a weepy person. I may well, and I get emotional inside, but I'm very good at choking it up. And we were like both, like we'd have these moments where we'd laugh our little like hearts out and like, we're dying thinking things are so funny, and then we'd like both, she'd start crying and I'd start crying. I also, maybe this is TMI, but I got my period 2 weeks early because of being around her and her super strong postpartum hormones. So those postpartum hormones are very real. It is so normal to feel weepy, to feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster, to like feel
like, why am I crying? And then it's like, it was like, don't, I think what was helpful, someone was like, you don't need a reason, you're in postpartum, like, and that was helpful to me, of like, I don't need a reason of like, why am I crying? This is so stupid. Like, it's just like, I'm just in postpartum, my hormones are crazy, I'm gonna cry at weird stuff. Yeah. Like, that's okay.
And you're sleep deprived, so that also doesn't help.
And you just went through labor. Mm-hmm. Like, you're recovering from like a huge, like, yeah. Oh. Yeah, those first days are like a complete blur to me. So Sarah helped at every feed, and she was like latching, like I would literally just like, and she'd like latch him, and he'd like feed. Like,
but mind you, we manually expressed for that first one, and then fed him with a syringe, which I haven't gotten the syringe yet, but I'll show you in a second. And then so somebody actually just asked, could you pump instead of manually expressing? This is actually a super solid question. So do you want to explain what you?
Yeah, so I actually did pump, like in the hospital, I asked for a pump, and then they got it and stuff. But, like, the problem with pumping at that stage, which, like, at first I didn't really get, I was just like, I'll pump because it seems easier, and, like, is that barely any of it comes off and then comes out of you, and then it gets stuck in all the, like, parts of the breast pump. So, like, the first part, and then the little, like, thing, and then, like, the bottom, if you've seen a breast pump, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And so, like, you could see that there was drops stuck in, and I couldn't get them down, and you're not producing very much, and so it's like very discouraging when you feel like he needs every drop that I can get out, and it's all like stuck in the pump. Was why, yeah.
So my suggestion for this is use the pump for stimulation, because remember, if you haven't seen my how to increase your milk supply or how do I know if my baby's getting enough videos, which are two like solid gold baseline breastfeeding information videos out there, the way that you produce more breast milk is by more stimulation of the breast. And by stimulation, I mean sucking action, whether that be from a pump, from manual expression, removing the milk. Remove the milk that tells your body to make more. And so the pump is good to like stimulate, but you lose the milk and literally you have drops, and those drops get stuck on the side of the plastic and you're trying to suck them up, and then you end up like, oh, I lost all of it. Whereas when you manually express, and I like to manually express into a plastic spoon, so like an actual tiny one, and then you actually get all the milk. You're gonna fill it up, suck it into a syringe. Do you wanna grab the syringe while I talk about this? Suck it into the syringe, and then you've saved most of it, because the volume at that point, if you have more than a teaspoon, you are an insane producer. Now, first time moms especially, second time moms, you may have more milk at that point, because especially if you breastfed before, you may feel like, okay, I have enough here, and like your milk volume ends up being a little bit more, okay? So now somebody asked, how do you decide what syringe to get? So the hospital should have these syringes. And this is the thing, if you're trying to breastfeed, the idea is you want the baby to learn that your breast is what they suck on, that they have to work for it, rather than giving a bottle from the beginning. Now, mind you can do that. There is actually, like, especially with pacifiers and stuff, like, which we could talk about too, this like could go on forever, that ideally you want to just teach the baby to eat on the breast. And with the syringe, so this was the syringe that we used. It's 1 milliliter. That's it. Okay. So this is nothing, guys. All right. And I remember you being like, oh my gosh, I got 0.6 today. And that's nothing in this syringe. And now she's getting like 4 ounces. Like, it's insane, which is like 40 of these. So, but in the beginning it's liquid gold and every drop counts. And so what we do is they started with this little sample spoon. This is a small spoon. You can use, like, will you grab one of the blue ones too? Sorry. they started with this, and this, if you get this much milk for those first feeds, that's enough for your newborn, okay? This is nothing. Now, what I would usually use would be just like a normal plastic spoon, and I like the plastic because the edges are a little bit thinner than would be this. Even this one, they feel a little bit thicker, so it's easier to like scrape the nipple and get as much out of there. So you would manually express, and I can do a video on this, guys, if you want. I can teach manual expression, getting into a spoon. I would need to find a volunteer because I feel like to show you would be even better. She's not going to be my volunteer. She would be like, it'd be shooting out across the room at this point. So if anybody wants to volunteer their boobs and they live in LA, I will come manually express with you and show you. So scoop in here, and then you would use the syringe to suck it up out of there. And then this goes back. I teach this in my infant safety and CPR class, which is online. I talk all about this and giving medications, etc. Goes back, and you just slowly let them. Okay, so we did this for the first feed, and while he was still sleepy. Now, mind you, by the time the second feed, then baby was like past like the 6-ish hour mark of post-circumcision, and then he was a lot more awake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when we got him on, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that at all? Do you have anything to say about it? I have lots I could say about
I
it,
don't
but
have much to say about it except that it felt very relieving. I feel like if you're trying to breastfeed, like Sarah kept saying this, like breastfeeding is postpartum if you are trying to breastfeed. And granted, like everyone makes their choices with that, and that's okay. But yeah, like it's so relieving when you're like, oh, he's actually eating. Like, oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. Well, and you had the support. So this is why having the support at home, having somebody that you can call to help, and or somebody even at home. This is why, guys, there's an entire specialty of postpartum doulas, of lactation specialists, of postpartum nurses, of night nurses that will help you with this kind of thing, okay? And you can hire them.
And it'd be worth the money. Like, granted,
You're
she's my
cheap.
sister, but I'm cheap.
Would you pay me?
I'm really cheap. I feel like maybe because maybe I wouldn't be able to afford you, but if I could afford you, I feel like I would. I feel like, I don't know. Like, I've told her, like, with a lot of things, like, I'm so cheap, you can get it for me for free. Like, because you're like, do you want this? And, like, that's not from her. And I'm like,
Yeah.
want to get it for me for free because I'm cheap.
Yeah, they're
But I was
very-
like, if I didn't have Sarah, like, I feel like it would be worth it to spend money, like, spend thousands of dollars on help. Because the reality is that we got breastfeeding going well in, like, a few days. And then...
And it was every single feed for, like, those first 3 days probably.
Yeah, and like, but now, like, I'm 3 weeks postpartum, and like, I don't need any help with breastfeeding. I'm not having any issues with breastfeeding. I do it all by myself. He's getting enough. He's doing good. My breast milk supply is good, and I feel like it was mostly, or like, because in that critical time of like right after, I had all of that support and help, and like honestly, like, it would be worth the money and investment to like just plan to like have someone be there when you get home from the hospital and like help you to like figure it out, because like it's so awkward. Like,
Well, and you were so tired. So let's talk about the progression of what had happened over the days. And I'm going to do like somewhat of a quick summary because we're already an hour
oh
in,
my
guys.
gosh,
And you
how are
guys,
we just so
this happened with the birth story. And I so appreciate anybody that stuck around, and I hope it's valuable to you. And these could turn into like whole videos as well. So let me know like of the stuff you've learned today. If you want more like dedicated videos, I can also do that because no one's going to sit around for like 2 hours. You know, those of you that do, God bless you. Kisses, hugs to all of you. Okay. So we get home, second feed, we got him on, and I'm just latching him. She's laying there. We started calling her the queen of all things because literally she'd lay with her ice mask and her like ice pack on her vagina and like her mask on. We're feeding her mouth while like I pull out her boob and put the baby on and hold the baby there, prop him up, burp him, diaper change him, and she's just like laying there like the queen. That is the ideal scenario for postpartum. That's to me how every postpartum woman should feel. And most people don't because they don't prioritize that care for the mama. Also remember, especially if you're breastfeeding, but even if you're not, that for her and her recovery, her body just went through war. It's literally the most strenuous thing you will ever do in your life to birth a baby. And that also includes C-section. It's different for C-section, but your body goes through an insane amount of stress to have this baby. And so for her to be able to truly rest, to recover, to get proper nutrition, for somebody to pay attention to her hydration, help get him latched every single feed for the first like 2 to 3 days is what I did. And then slowly, as she's coming out of the like fog of like, where am I today? And what day is it? And what's happening? She was able to take in little pieces of information as time went on and add to that to get her to a place of more independence. And I would say it was by like day 3 to 4 being home that you were starting to like, you did your first feed alone. Remember, it was like the 5 a.m. feed. I was sleeping and you didn't wake me. And what we learned was also that breastfeeding changes over time, that first feed was syringe fed and then we reevaluated. And that's how I would encourage you guys to take it with breastfeeding, is literally one feed at a time, because you also have a newborn that's changing. And the first night they're really sleepy. The second night they're trying to bring your milk in. And so that's where like also being like, oh wait, where are we at now? We had so many conversations. We had so much fun, Hannah. I would say that like one of the surprises you guys asked in Instagram, what one of my surprises was. My surprise was how bonding it was for you and me during those first few days and how much fun we had. Like we'd be up at 1 a.m. dying laughing about things. Like I don't even remember. Oh, remember the poop with Josh?
Oh my gosh.
This was hilarious.
Josh had him like didn't have a diaper on him. I don't know why.
He like was feeling real brave about the diapers.
And all of a sudden he's like, oh, he's pooping on me. And there's like poop on his arm. Like,
and he's holding
like,
the baby up like, ah! And we're dying laughing, just letting it happen. And he goes over, he's like, whoa, oh my, oh geez. And we're just laughing. And these are the moments, guys, that like, those are the memories you'll remember forever. There's no perfect postpartum. We did a lot of things that we were like, I don't know. Let's see. How does he like that? What do we think about this? And like, oops, he threw up there. And you know, like there's so many things that you just have to figure out. And that's the joy of it. But a lot of times if it becomes this like really weighty thing that you have to do right, or you're so worried, and that's where anxiety settles in. If you're so worried about everything you're doing when you're like, your baby is fed, they're clothed, they're warm, they're snuggled, I don't know what else, like you're good, guys. And that's where one of my tips always for my baby care class, and even like on the doctor's show, when I was on the doctor's show, they said, like, what's your biggest tip for a new dad? Because it was the Travis that was having the baby. And I was like, honestly, like, it's not practical. It's use common sense, give yourself grace, and love your baby. And that, to me, if you remember those 3 things, then when baby poops on you or pees all over the couch or whatever, you can actually laugh about it, and it can become like a funny memory for you that you'll remember forever. And so for me, like with the postpartum period, I wasn't expecting to feel as bonded to you as I was. And I wasn't expecting to have so much fun and like so much emotion, so much. Like I felt like I was in postpartum with her because and honestly, it's probably the pheromones of like
and
your
fact
hormones.
That you were up with me every feed. So
I was very sleep deprived. And so we just told stories and we reflected and like laughing and then crying and like looking at him and learning and all these things together while I latched him for every feed until she started to become more independent. Yeah. We also introduced the Haakaa during that time. And then we're going to talk about jaundice too, because we knew that he had some jaundice and that needed to be monitored. So day 2, this home health nurse came, which props to Minnesota. California, you have a long way to go because this is where it's at as far as like postpartum care goes.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the nurse?
Yeah. So because it was that we left the hospital really fast, they said that they like, and then his jaundice level was kind of high, that they were going to send a home health nurse that would be included in like insurance and everything. And so she just came, she like called the night before and then called the morning of, and because of COVID did like interview over the phone to like reduce the time in the house, which they probably wouldn't do that normally. But yeah, and then she just came right down to like the basement where we were and just asked a bunch of different questions. She weighed him and she like did his vital signs and
yours too,
mine, and took a blood sample to test for jaundice again, and had all this different literature and different things about jaundice, and and whatnot. And then, but it was so helpful that like she came to our house. Like the fact, like the oh my gosh, leaving the
Yeah.
next day would have been like,
Or leaving to go get him retested for his jaundice levels is just any medical person. Home health is where it's at for especially this kind of thing. If
For
you've never had a baby or something, like it's just so much work to try to leave. If you have to leave, like you have to leave, and you'll do it and you'll do a great job. But it was really nice to have her come and test the levels.
Yeah. So then she got those levels into lab or whatever, and then we get the call that his jaundice had gone up, and that they were going to be sending a Billy Light to have on him to like treat it or whatever. And so then they like dropped one off at the house. And then we started.
So mind you, backtrack with this, because I knew this was a thing, and we know that if your baby's levels are borderline or high, the goal is feed. You have to feed them. And so we actually put you on a schedule, and I said, we are feeding him every 2 hours. And that's 2 hours from the beginning of one feed to the beginning of the next. And so that's where, like, for the both of us, we were both like in like delirium by day 2 or 3 at being home, because it's like, oh my gosh, like it was just a lot of feeds. But also we're trying to increase her milk volume by stimulating the breast and give him more to keep him pooping. And he was pooping a lot at that point. His poop had already started transitioning, because the poop's gonna go from super black to like greenish, brownish, smoother, and then goes to like yellow seedy, which is where he's at now. And so that yellow, think of the yellow of the skin going out through the bowel into the yellow poop. You want the poop to turn yellow. So we were trying to stimulate all the time. We did introduce the Haakaa, and if you don't know about the Haakaa, it's coming. One of my next videos coming up in July probably will be my baby essentials. So the things like top 5 or top however many of like the products that we use on the regular that are maybe an investment, but definitely worth your money. One of them, it's not an investment, is the Haakaa. It's like $13. It's on my Amazon list, which I will link down below. Best thing ever, because what's happening is it helps to create a gentle suction on the breast to stimulate the breast, but not overstimulate the breast. Because when you're trying to stimulate your milk supply, you are at risk for oversupply, which can be even harder to manage eventually. So we wanted to stimulate the breast every 2 hours, not overdo it. So like I could have told you, like if I didn't know any better, I would have told you to pump for another 10 minutes on both boobs. That's too much stimulation. When he was latching on the breast and eating for a solid, like, what were we doing? 15 and 15 at that point?
Yeah.
15 on one boob, 15 on the other ish. And then Haakaa while the baby feeds on the other.
Yeah.
So that's how you use it. And so, you know, she was getting like at first like maybe like a little bit in the bottom, and now she's filling it like every time she puts it on her boobs. So like, talk about it worked. But we were getting little bits, and then we were feeding that to the baby as well. And so that's where it was just this like, we just got to feed him. And you can't overfeed a baby with breast milk. You can with formula. And so you want to measure it out with formula and just regiment yourself out. But with breast milk, it came out, we'd put it in the syringe, and I'd give him like an extra 4 or 5 milliliters, and that to stimulate the bowel, saying we got to get himself pooping. We got to give him the volume to help get rid of the jaundice. But it still had gone up. Mind you, you'd only been home for like, I don't know, 12 hours, 15 hours-ish. And so we'd been doing this, but it was still like not a full day of this. Jaundice levels had gone up, and so they were like, all right, he's eating this regularly, wait and see. We did that another day, retested, and that's when we got the test level back. And they were like, it's gone up, and it had gone up by like a good jump. It wasn't in the critical level, but it was like it had gone up enough that if it went up that much the next day, we'd be potentially in problems. And so we opted to use the Billy Lights, which were at home. Now, this is not always an option. And Billy Lights you learn about in my childbirth class. If you haven't taken my childbirth class, it's in that class. That's the childbirth bundle. But we got one at home. And so I also have a YouTube video coming on this. And so we got the lights, and we did that for the next 24 hours, still feeding around the clock. And that's the thing with the Billy Lights too, just like a little plug for the next video that's coming. Whenever it comes, it's filmed, but we'll get there. Is that the lights need to be on. It's the amount of time. So I think that was one of the things that we learned too, that like no one had really given her much education, and thank God she had me at home to help her with all of this. But like the most surface area exposed of the baby, and the goal is 23 hours of 24 hours of the day.
Yeah, which was definitely like, wait, what? Because it was very hard to, it's hard enough to maneuver breastfeeding in the beginning. And then if you have him on the Billy Lights, which you see Sarah's other video, but like, it's just so much more. He's like connected to this cord thing, and it's like,
and wrapped
so
and overheated.
much, like, and you're trying to like cover his eyes from, oh my gosh, it was so much more stressful to like breastfeed with the Billy Light on, and you're still trying to figure it out. You're at the beginning, and it was just like, that put me over the edge. I like hated the Billy Light, honestly, and like, it was so much more stressful with
and
it on.
I remember saying that because you guys were like, well, what about these lights? And I'm like, honestly, it's not so much like a problem. It's just going to be super annoying if we have to get there. And so that's where my thought process was with it all. It's like, our goal is feed this kid like crazy, increase your milk volume, get your milk to come in. And your milk came in like day 4, I think, which is very normal. And by milk come in, what did that look like and feel like to you?
Like, my boobs, like, getting, like, hard.
Big.
Like, big. Like, filling up, basically. And I feel like there was, like, kind of where it's, like, a little sore. Like, oh, what's going on?
They were just fuller.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, they, like, kind of got, like, bigger and firmer and felt, like, sore. You were like, oh, my
like,
boobs,
ow.
and heavy. You kept saying heavy.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's because we had done so much stimulation. The other piece of this was having a good latch every single time. Mind you, this could be a YouTube video too, so I need that volunteer for breastfeeding to show how to latch a baby, because it also, there's some tricks to that, and because I was there every single time, he had a good latch every single time. Now, talk about your nipples. How are your nipples?
My nipples are fine. They're great. They don't hurt. They're not bleeding. They're not.
And they never did.
No.
Her nipples have been totally normal. So all you people who hear these stories of like breastfeeding is so hard and breastfeeding this and that. Now, mind you, it's not always just a latch thing, but 90% of the time it's a latch issue. That baby isn't latched well. And so you just need to make a couple of adjustments. And then if you have a solid, good latch every single time, your nipples should be fine. They might be sore. The letdown can be uncomfortable. It still is.
It's still like,
Uh-huh.
ow.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And then, but then it should go
But
away.
then it goes away.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's also key to avoiding the sore nipples thing, because then you get dry, cracked, bleeding nipples, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't breastfeed, and then you're pumping, but it hurts, and then you're like wondering about how much, and the pump doesn't stimulate the breast like the baby does, and it becomes this whole drama thing. So have a good latch every time. When you're in the hospital, ask your nurses to show you what a good latch looks like, and if they have any tips for you to getting that good latch. Key here, if it hurts after that initial like, holy moly, letdown, wow, oh, and then it still hurts, or it hurts on the nipple, you hear like a clicking noise or like a flicking, or you see the nipple in the baby's mouth, you probably don't have a good latch. Restart. Reset everything, try again. Eventually your baby will learn and they'll adjust themselves. But in the first few days, as they're learning and you're learning, that's when you end up with issues that can last you way longer. And so for you, you were lucky enough to have the help to, with every single feed, I'm like adjusting the latch and looking at it and like, okay, we're good. Let's redo this.
Yeah.
Her nipples were fine.
I think that's why I would say like it would definitely be worth like the investment to like have help at the beginning if you don't have someone that like, you know, offers and like knows, or even like another mom that's like done it before or something that wants to like help you. But if you don't have that to like pay for it, because now like literally breastfeeding for me it feels like totally, and I'm only 3 weeks postpartum, like, oh, it's whatever, it's fine, I do it even like in the park or on the boat or like you know, I've already done it in multiple places. I don't feel stressed about it, and I feel like I've heard a lot of stories of people feeling stressed for really long or always about breastfeeding, and I feel like getting that support initially is actually like the best for it.
Totally. There's something else I was gonna say, and now I totally lost my train of thought. Okay. So that was, okay, that was the thing, the jaundice thing, and then also, this is why my script for breastfeeding is, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do until all of a sudden, it's the easiest thing you've ever done. And that's when you know the shift has happened into like establishing, you have enough milk. Milk is not an issue. Your nipples are fine. Baby is eating around the clock. What are the keys to knowing that your baby's getting enough? Your baby's gaining weight and you have enough diapers. And so that is in my how to know your baby's getting enough video. I have more about that over there. You can go over there. And so that's where, again, it like goes to getting the right support, having the education ahead of time, really working, and also understanding if you don't have that support, that like learning what a good latch looks like, and then committing to it every single feed for that first while until you get the hang of it, and knowing that whatever struggles you're going through, breastfeeding is hard. It's hard for everyone. It was hard for her, and she had all the support possible in the world. And so knowing that, and then also knowing that it's temporary. It's like labor. It's not going to last forever, that if you push through, keep pushing, because it will become easier for you. I saw something about CD poops. CD runny poops are completely normal breast milk poops. 100% normal poops. You would not have solid adult poops for a newborn baby unless maybe with formula they get a little bit more solid. The other thing is your breastfeeding support. La Leche League is an international organization that has breastfeeding support groups. My mom, I know, talks about how she met one of her best friends in La Leche League, and they were their breastfeeding support people. And whenever they wanted to quit, they would call each other and talk themselves out of it. And she breastfed us for over a year. So you need that support around you. Yeah. Okay, so jaundice, we did the Billy Lights for 24 hours, and then he was retested. At that point, he was back to gaining weight. He did look jaundiced, and so I will also post a picture of him on my Instagram to show you what a jaundiced baby looks like. You can especially see it in their eyes. They're really yellow. He looked yellow. Like, and anything I posted on Instagram, people were like, I had lots of people being like, are you sure this baby's okay? And you need to check your jaundice levels. I'm like, thank you, we're really aware. And so I appreciate your concern about him. He was getting the treatment that he needed. His levels equaled out. They started to come down. He was peeing and pooping. He was also never having signs, and so on and so forth. So we got out of the window of jaundice, thankfully, but this, the guys, was like day 6 of life, and you'd been home for 5. Like, it was probably 5 or 6 days until we were able to discontinue the Billy bed, and then we were back skin to skin. For you, skin to skin has been very fun, and you're still doing skin to skin for your breastfeeding, etc. And then breastfeeding, like at that point, became a little bit more independent, and you were kind of doing your own thing, and we had talked about that. We were doing more education at Now. She didn't need me for every feed, so on and so forth. So that's kind of the breastfeeding journey. The other thing I want to talk about, guys, is our nighttime sleep routines, because sleep is a huge thing that is a concern for you guys. It is legit. Myself included, I experienced it, even providing the support. And so I would say, let's talk about some of the ways that your sleep evolved. What are some of the things that worked for us, that we learned along the way? And this is where, again, for you guys to take your postpartum experience day by day with whoever you have around you. Do a check-in every so often, and like, what's working, what's not. And you were really good at initiating that, of like, hey, okay, so this worked last night, this didn't work, and then let's try this next time. Yeah. And so that first night, I slept down here on the couch, and this couch is like wrecked. Like, it's not comfortable, and I didn't sleep very well. But I was available for every feed. And then we realized that you were really needing the support. Like, it wasn't like a, just call me when you need me. It was like a, no, don't leave me type situation. And so we eventually completely rearranged the downstairs area. So we're actually on her, like one of her breastfeeding stations right now. And then we moved the couch that has a pull-out bed down here put a memory foam on it. And then I just have had a bed down here since they delivered. And I leave on Tuesday. So I'm just going to sleep down here and be available for that. And so initially I was there with you every single feed. And then once we got a little more independent, we've worked it out. Do you want to explain what's worked for you? Maybe?
Yeah. So I feed him. Then I go to bed. Well, so like a comment on that. So like in birth coaching, which is like Sarah's whole birth coaching process of like, just, you don't have to think about anything. You just like get to learn about all the things in this packet. But
which I do offer to everybody.
Talked about like prioritizing your sleep. And so like I started getting like very strategic after a little bit of like, okay, I'm gonna feed him soon. So like, think of all the things that you need to do to like be able to get in bed. And like, brush your teeth before you and like, I literally have my sleep mask like on my head, like I was ready. Like I was wearing the right clothes. I had my bed, like my pillows and like just everything set up. So literally like right when I was done feeding, I could just literally maybe pee or whatever, and then get in bed and like start sleeping because.
And what would you do with
so
the baby?
Easy. Oh, and then I would give the baby to Sarah.
Or dad. Dad has also been a part of this situation. I know we've
Yes.
talked a lot about our relationship, but he has very much been present and very
Yes.
much been
And,
involved
like-
in getting lots of time with baby.
Yeah, so it's super great to have a supportive husband and dad,
Mhm.
baby. But yeah, so I just like hand him off to somebody else like right when it's done feeding. So like when you're done feeding, he still has to burp, still has to get changed, maybe has to get like a new outfit or put an outfit on or like sleeping or what, like sleep
Swaddled,
outfit,
sleep.
swaddled, all the things. So really like it takes a few more minutes, and like that was something like in birth coaching that was really helpful because I thought, well, I'm just gonna be like up so much in the night, like why would anyone else get up? Because it's my boobs and like I have to be up anyway. But it's like it's actually really helpful to have someone like do beforehand and afterwards like all the stuff that has to be done with the baby, because you actually get more sleep even if it's like 15 minutes. That's actually like gold. So basically what I do is like feed, then Sarah takes that first shift because she's generally like up later than everyone else. She's a night owl. And hangs out with him and films YouTube videos with him or whatever it is. And then I go sleep, and so does Josh. And then she comes and gets me up. So like baby's with her, not in our room for the first part. And then she comes and gets me up when he needs to feed. I come up, get fed, whatever, and then do you go to sleep? And
Yeah,
then, yeah.
usually.
So she just gives him to me. I feed him. She goes to sleep. Then at the end, I wake up my husband, Josh. I give him to him to get changed or whatever, and I go to sleep. And then he gets up and does the rest of the stuff with baby. Because sometimes, too, baby's not ready to go to sleep and is fussy, too. Of like, oh, like you lay him down and he's just like, meh, you know, and like, so like needs a little more burping or whatever, and maybe takes a little bit. So like Josh would do that, get him back to sleep, then we go back to sleep, both of us. And then the next time we wake up, we're all basically waking up for the day, right?
Yep.
So my baby sleeps well too, so like that's a blessing.
He
It's
gave her
generally-
5 hours last night.
Yeah. And he's 3 weeks old. But yeah, so it's kind of like a tag team. Oh yeah, and then mom has also, so we're staying with my parents. So my mom, sometimes we sleep after that next morning feed. And so then I'll text mom if she's up, depending on the time, be like, hey, you up? And she's like, yeah, I'm up. And they're like, want baby? So then she'll come and get him at the end of that feed, and I'll go back to bed. So it's kind of this whole like tag teaming thing. And for the first however long, I couldn't sleep with him like in the same room. And so I ended up starting to sleep out here with Sarah in the living room when he was in with Josh. And then when Sarah had him, I was sleeping in with Josh. So I was like changing beds.
And actually, I feel like that worked really well for you.
It worked super well because I was able to really sleep. And my problem was like hearing him, and I would hear every little noise and wake me up. And that was not good for sleep, obviously. And then slowly but surely I've been transitioning. So then I transitioned to sleeping in the same room with him with earplugs in, which actually was good because I would only hear him if he was like, "Rah!" You know, like really loud, which generally, like for the most part, means he needs to eat, or like it doesn't happen that often.
But babies make like...
Yeah, they make noise. That wasn't exciting.
Like that was one last night that I remember he was like laying here and he's... And I remember thinking like, these are the phone calls that I get from you guys. Or the texts that like, what's wrong with my baby? When that is normal. As long as the color's good and whatever. So I'm like, oh, okay, you're good, whatever. But that can be really scary and it'll wake you up and you're like, oh, is my baby suffocating? Like what's going on?
Yeah, or like he'll full out cry and he's not awake.
Yep.
Like it's crazy. So, yeah, that was really helpful for me to not sleep in the same room as him for at least the first bit. Now, like last night was the first time where I slept in with him, didn't have earplugs in, and like it was only for one, because you had him 2 shifts last
Yeah,
night.
I did. I took him, and I didn't sleep well. So this is where, like, I think for you guys to recognize that the goal is to room in with your baby, that your baby's in the same room as you. It makes everything so much simpler. You want them to not sleep with you, but in like a co-sleeper or a bassinet or a crib in your room, so they're easy to access, but they make noise when they sleep. And when you're nervous, that's where help also comes in. Of like, she had to remove herself so that she could sleep better because you were prioritizing your sleep. Biggest key for sleep, guys, is you have to prioritize that. Now, if you have a partner and you're taking shifts, that like when partner passes baby to you, that and you're gonna be up between shifts, that partner goes straight to bed and goes and gets a good night's sleep, a good like sleep, which is like 3-4 hours, maybe 2 to 4. And then they can get up and take a shift for that and eventually put your baby down to sleep. But if they get up, it's like, who's getting up with the baby? Have that determined, and throw earplugs in the other one. The other one is you have the sound machine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that drowns out a lot of his like little noises where he's just like,
Which you don't need to respond to, guys. And this is where, like, this is a whole nother class on too, on like newborns and taking care of babies and blah, blah. And so that also recognizing that like their little sounds and stuff while they sleep, let them be.
yeah. And like, I think too, like trusting, like if you have a partner that's like willing to help, wants to help, and like, you know, is like trusting him. Cause like, you know, you hear it and then you're like, if you've determined that it's him that's gonna like get up and do it, but you're like, I'm awake and like, is he gonna get up? What's he doing with it? You know, it's like trusting that like, okay, I'm gonna trust somebody else, that like someone else can take care of my baby too, and it's not just me. And like communicating, because like I remember at a certain point, like I just said, I'm really, really stressed out about the night. Like I can't sleep well in the same room. Like what can I do? Like I can't, I'm not sleeping well when he's there. And it was like, okay, we're gonna like
we
brainstorm.
reevaluated. Yeah. And that's when we moved the bed down here, so that instead of sleeping on the couch, she actually had another bed to sleep in that was separate from the baby. And she did have to sleep, in order to get that good night's sleep, she had to sleep separate from the baby. That's okay, guys. Your baby is okay as long as they're taken care of by somebody else. Like, step away and set that boundary for yourself. Your mental health, your sleep, your recovery matters. We haven't even talked about your vagina.
Oh my gosh. It's
OMG.
So long again.
Okay. All right.
But someone asked about anxiety and stuff. So like, I've had very little, I feel like, but the thing that I have had is that I dream, or I'm like half awake, that I'm like suffocating the baby's in with bed with me, and I'm like, I've rolled over on him and he's dying like underneath me, which is like super scary. And so I like wake up and I'm like, where's the baby? And I'm like asking people where the baby is, and I'm asking if I was just feeding. I asked, did you give him to me? And I'm like so out of it.
The number of times this girl has walked out and I'm here with the baby, and she has like hair here and like mask on her head and like boobs out, and like, did I feed the baby? I'm like, no. She's like, I started my timer. Like, she's starting her breastfeeding timer
like,
in
while
her
I'm
sleep.
Sleeping.
Yeah, it's so good.
And so it actually was helpful for me, of like, I was like, everyone tell me you're not going to give me the baby while I'm like in bed. And like, honestly, I think some people can like breastfeed in bed, but because that's been like my anxiety thing, I'm like, no, like someone like, oh, I could just bring him to you and you could breastfeed here. Like, no, like for me, it's like, no, I like need to get out of bed, because like that's like the anxiety that I have of like, if he was here, I would be like smushing him and he'd be suffocating or whatever. But like once like Josh and Sarah and Mom did it too, they were like, I'm not gonna bring him to you in bed, and like I'm not gonna leave him to you there and like let you fall asleep or whatever. It was actually like my subconscious, like I haven't had it anymore since like they all said that, and I was like, we're not gonna do that, and I was like, okay, they're not gonna do that, and it was like my subconscious kind of like clicked out of it of like, no one's gonna do this to you, and like let this happen type of thing.
But you said that out loud.
Yeah.
And that's where some of those anxieties, guys, a lot of times you just need to talk about them and let them get out of the loop in your head. And that's what anxiety does, is it's like, it like gnaws at your brain. And so it's like, hey, I'm stressed about this. Is this a thing? I have one client right now that's really good at that. And like, hey, I'm having some fears. I'm having some anxieties. Can I talk about this? I'm worried about blah, blah, blah. And she talks about it, and it's easier to let it go when you do that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you've had really no baby blues or postpartum depression for sure.
No, which I was really, so like I actually have like a history of struggling with depression, so I was expecting to do that. And I was kind of like scared, because people say like you're more likely to if you have a history of it. And like I haven't, so like I feel like that's like a positive, like a hope for people. Like just because you've struggled in the past with these things doesn't mean that like it's automatic that you're going to struggle with it in that time. And I think it has a lot to do with like, because like I think if I just remained how I felt like in the hospital, especially about breastfeeding, like
Yeah.
that I would have definitely struggled with those things. And so like it has really a ton to do with like having the right support and then also using your support. Because if I wasn't communicating like I need a different plan for the night because I'm anxious about it, and like I didn't get good sleep last night, I couldn't sleep, it's like no one else knows that I was awake, even though because I just laid there, I didn't actually get up, but I was awake, you know. And so people don't know that you need a different plan or that you need help to figure things out, or you need to make a change unless you communicate that with your support people of like I need help with this or whatever.
Well, and then when you were able to say it, it was like, oh, okay, this is how we can fix it. Let's try this. What about this? And then we try it, see if it works, and then it worked. And you've done very, very well.
Yeah, and like I think part of it has been I've been like really prioritizing sleep, and like that was something that Alyssa Berlin, it's part of the birth coaching that you can like meet with her, and like she has a whole session too about postpartum.
And she has a class online, I'll link down below, that you guys can take. I talked about it in the last video I did, which was for support people.
Yeah, and so something that she talked about was kind of like, it was all about like relationships and like staying healthy and like baby coming into your life and all these things, but like that sleep was kind of like the pillar or whatever of like if you're getting good sleep, then like for your relationship with your partner and stuff like that too, that really affects it. And like I can see that that's so true, because the nights where I've been like, oh, that didn't go well, like I feel like the next day I'm just like, oh, like I'm just like this is awful, versus nights where I feel like, okay, I got some solid like hours of sleep. And also like reframing, like for me, like I'm tracking my sleep in like the app, the NAR Baby app, under sleep, even though it's for baby sleep, but I'm like, I'm tracking my own sleep because I want to know how much sleep I got. But like reframing, like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna, maybe for like a year I'm not gonna get, you know, I have no idea how long it would be, but like I'm not gonna get 8-9 hours solid of sleep, but I could get 8-9 hours of sleep within a 24-hour period, or like over the night span, even though it's in 2-hour or 3-hour or 4-hour chunks. And it's like reframing of like, I got enough sleep, it was just broken up. And I think that helps mentally too.
Yeah, and that is what I teach about sleep in birth coaching and in my classes, is that like it has to become your priority. Like you actually have to think about it, versus now when without a kid, you're like, oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna go to bed. And then you like wash your face, you like turn on a show, you're on your phone, and then you go to bed like an hour later. Whereas like for you, you've done a really good job at taking that advice and saying like, I'm eating now dinner, I'm gonna feed him, and then I'm out, guys. And then we take him and we hang out, and she sleeps and gets up and has her time, goes right back to bed. And so that I think has been hugely crucial for your recovery even.
Yeah, and even like when you're waking up, like to try to not fully wake up and try not to think about things, because that also like, if I get on my phone and I'm researching something, or I'm on my email and like I get a stressful email and I'm like reading it, then when I try to go back to sleep half hour later, I'm awake there.
That's good.
Instead of, okay, I'm just gonna like sit here, I'm gonna like breastfeed him, I'm gonna like try to just like remain kind of zoned out and just focus on him. And like, yeah, maybe get on your phone, but do something mindless. Like, don't be like looking at your email half in the middle of the night, or like something that's gonna stress you out. Yeah. Because I know like I've done that too, and then I'm like, oh gosh, like I can't fall asleep now. Because I fully woke up at 4 a.m.
Right.
I didn't need to. What was I thinking?
Yeah, that's really good. Your peri-care routine. So your vagina, let's talk all about your vag.
Vagina.
So she had a 1st-degree tear, and when you came home, you were a little waddly.
Yes.
And we set up with the squirt bottle, which you'll get from the hospital. We set you up with pads. You already had the hospital pads, your hospital underwear. Take all this ish from the hospital. And then witch hazel pads and numbing cream. That was pretty much what you did. And then an occasional ice pack. So we did not even do padsicles, guys, which we had, like, I have a video about, and I typically like tell people about, but it was just kind of like, this is where I think you can also overdo it, where you're like so excited and like, oh, I'm so worried about my recovery, when like it's pretty simple. to be honest. That it's like you tell them what you did or do, sort of. Less
What do I
do
do
now.
for-
For your pericare, how do you what's your system for your vagina?
Well, at the beginning, it like stings when you pee, and so you want to like squirt the bottle while you're peeing.
Mhm.
But like now it doesn't, so like I just still squirt to like kind of like clean it out there.
Clean it off.
Just kind of like freshen. But yeah, like squirting while you pee or squirting after too, with water, and then what was I doing at the beginning? I've kind of changed it now.
You don't wipe.
No,
Pat
you
dry.
don't wipe.
Yeah, you can. So somebody asked me this on Instagram that like if you wipe, then the remnants of the toilet paper and stuff can get in your vagina, in your wound, and can stick there and can potentially contribute to an infection. So I usually just say squirt it off, and then put the pad on and just use the pad to like
Oh yeah,
pat you
and
dry.
then what I would do is like take the witch hazel stuff that they gave at the hospital, which were these like circular
Tux
things.
pads. Mm-hmm.
And I
They're
put
on
some
my
of-
postpartum Amazon list.
Okay, I put some of this like numbing cream that I got at the hospital at the beginning down the middle of it, and then I'd stick that on like where the tear was / on my vagina, and then put my underwear and that keep it in like place or whatever, so that like the numbing cream was on there, which was really helpful for the beginning. I think that they have numbing sprays and stuff too. at the
Dermaplast
hospitals.
spray, yeah, some sort of. You can ask for this
Um,
while you're in the hospital.
Yeah, and then now like I kind of like I still am not using toilet paper, but we have these like non-woven sponges that I think are on your Amazon too.
Mhm, yeah.
That are really nice because like they're not gonna like crumble like the toilet paper, how little bits can get off. So I've been using those to kind of like wipe.
I didn't even know you were doing that.
Oh really?
These non-woven sponges, I think I should put them on the list. They are
Yeah.
so
I
versatile.
even use them for my eye mask when they're the eye mask.
Yeah,
is too
yeah, for circumcision care, for covering a little penis when they're changing
For
a
like
diaper.
grabbing something like to just wipe his eyes off.
Yep.
Or like
Yep, and they're like $6.99 for 500. So they're on my postpartum list probably and baby, and I will feature them they're going on the list because they're such a cheap
yeah,
good thing to
I
have
was
around.
using those for veg. Someone asked how long should you be squirting. That's a good question. I'm still squirting. Should I be squirting still?
Only, I mean, if you want to, you can squirt forever if you want. It's like a
Keep it nice and
bidet,
clean.
basically. One way to keep your vag nice and fresh. But until you don't have any more pain or you feel like you're healed down there, and that's going to be specific for everybody, the stitches dissolve in about 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, typically, sometimes longer. I know you had some like pokey sensations every once in a while, which we
the
determined was
beginning.
probably just the end of the stitches sticking out and poking you. So I just was like, kind of like move your vagina around and like it'll move the pokey things from your stitches and then not feel so bad. But otherwise, squirt as long as you want until you don't really have any more discomfort down there or you're not bleeding as much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was
Simple.
sponge. I still have like the witch hazel. I have these other ones now that have like aloe in them. We got at Target, and like it feels fresh down there to like, or use like a wipe that's like a baby wipe, but like a water wipe.
Mhm.
Can use down there, or like for pooping too. That was stressful for me to like poop for the first time.
That typically is stressful for the first time.
Yeah, it was kind of painful. But
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's nice.
What was the most helpful thing or piece of advice that you have for them when thinking about the postpartum period?
Definitely like the sleep thing that we already talked about.
Okay.
I feel like sleep, and then also like people want to help you. Like I remember like I've been a friend to like people who've had a baby before, and I've said, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. You know, like you just like people like don't mind like helping you. Like if you have good people in your life, hopefully that like are caring. But I think it would be really easy to like not utilize those people. And so even like I've had it built in where like for instance if I'm like I'm out of pads or I'm out of witch hazel and I want more of them, can someone go to Target? It's like someone in the household just goes, Sarah or Josh or my parents. But like if you don't have that, if like it's just you alone or you and your husband's working or whatever, and you're like, I don't feel like I can leave with my baby, I need stuff from Target, that like reach out to your friends and be like, hey, could you like stop by Target for me? And like it's so easy for someone that's not in postpartum to stop by Target and grab some stuff for you. It's so stressful for you when you're right in the middle of it to think about leaving and to like figure all that crap out. So like stuff like that, or like with food, like my mom's been cooking for us, and like we haven't had to like really think about
The
it.
queen.
I
We
know,
were one
it's
night, we were
amazing.
like, ooh, we want chocolate chip cookies. So we texted my mom, we're like, Mom, can you make us chocolate chip cookies? Sure enough, I feel like I'm like back in high school. This is a dream. And next thing we knew, we had fresh home baked chocolate chip cookies awaiting us.
Yeah.
We've been spoiled. We, myself included. So, yeah. Okay, so sleep and then receiving help.
Yeah, and even like at night, like helping, because I remember someone said that at baby shower, like even with your husband, like let him help you at night, and like it's like, oh, okay, and like I don't have to do this by myself, and I think when you get that in your head, like it's all on me, that's really stressful, and like that, like whatever support you do have, like utilize it, and like if you have the money to like, you know, pay for certain like ordering food or pay for help for support of that too, or just utilizing who you have in your life and like talking to people beforehand, because like we had whole family meetings of like, okay, what's gonna be helpful to like beforehand, and like, is that okay, like mom's been doing laundry, you know, and it's like people could come over and like do your laundry, you know, and like that's also in Alyssa Berlin's class of like thinking through all the different ways people could support you, and who are those people that can do that, and like that you could reach out to even beforehand and say, hey, do you mind like doing my groceries for a few weeks, you know, after I do that, and I could send you a list. I mean, I would love as a friend to like receive that text and be like, totally, I would love to help you, I'll pick up your groceries for these weeks.
Yeah. So receive the help and then send your support people that video that I just did on ways to help too, because it talks about that and being food, and then being really like intentional about being specific for what you need. Okay, and then is there anything you wish you would have done or prepped for more?
I think just kind of what I was talking about at the beginning with like the hospital stuff. But wish I would've
You
done.
did all the things.
Yeah, I did a lot of things. We did infant CPR class, baby care class, birth coaching, like did a lot of different things.
And birth coaching, guys, is 8 sessions with me prior to birth, and all my classes, and Alyssa Berlin's class, and a session with a perinatal psychologist. So if you're looking for a process that literally lays it all out for you, and you're like, please help me be extra ready, I got you.
I read a book like at the very beginning when I was like getting pregnant, like trying. That was the last time I read a book. That was the last time I even like really much Googled anything, because like literally with birth coaching, it's just all there, and so you don't have to be like looking for, oh, should I get this book, or is this a good way, or da da da. It's just kind of like, here you go, easy.
And then you can always text me if anything comes up, which is true for birth coaching as well, FYI. Okay, so the key that you would say as far as what you would have known beforehand is maybe advocating for yourself in postpartum and being aware of like the visitor thing, and then speaking up for help when you needed it.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe.
Especially if I wasn't coming home to breastfeeding help too. I think just really advocating for yourself that like even like I need help every feed, and like saying that even on the like thing we can make of like I would like help on every breastfeeding feed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to like, do you want me to call you, or like you know, I'm gonna want to call you and like, can you help me please, and like teach me what you can, or like yeah. It's stressful to feel like alone. And like granted, there were definitely moments where I felt super connected to Josh in the hospital, and like over like just bonding with the baby, and like, you know, and like he's the one that drew my bath, and like, you know, just like,
And he's so helpful.
yeah, and he's like super duper helpful. But
And
like I think
hands-on.
with breastfeeding, it's just like you need someone who knows what they're doing to help you, whether that's in the hospital, whether that's, you know, like there's resources, there's support groups, there's whatever of like, just get help, get
A
other
friend that's
people.
breastfed their babies
Yeah.
before that you can reach out to for help. Yeah.
Totally. Like now I'm like, dude,
Facebook groups.
if my friends having kids after me like don't have the support, like I'll totally come over and be like, let me help you. Like this is what I learned, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Cool. And last but not least, unless you guys have more questions, which I have seen your questions come in, I'm like, we could literally go on forever. But what are some things that you've done to help you feel yourself again? I think this is a very insightful question because one of the struggles with the postpartum period is this idea that like you've lost yourself and now you're just this milk machine and so tied to your baby and like can't do anything ever again and like all these things. And so I think you and Josh have done a really good job at maintaining some normalcy and also a pandemic that's not normal, and really like worked to feel yourself.
Yeah, I think like identifying what those things are beforehand.
What things are.
Like for instance, what fills you up or what makes you feel alive or what is good for like self-care or makes you feel like yourself in general, because like I feel like in life like you can just kind of like I'm going, but it's like what are the things that really like fill you up in life and like help you to like slow down and enjoy and like savor and all that and like connect or whatever, and then figuring out, okay, like maybe there's a version of that you could do like now. So for instance, like we've gone on walks like with baby, we've gone on walks without baby, where like Sarah or our parents have watched him for like, you can leave your baby for, you know, half an hour walk or something. And
car rides.
Yeah, like just drove around, car rides. Right now there's not much to do.
Yeah, there's
You
very
can't,
little
like,
you can do.
Much. Taking baths. Like I love taking baths anyway, and so then like the first days are just like to a good bath is like a good like, but I think too, just like, especially like if you have a partner like to connect with, like carving out that time to just like connect with each other, and like we have like this little like place we can walk to that's like this lookout over this like little lake that's in like a very residential area. It's not like this huge lake or anything, but just we're like we can like go there and like sit and look out and like talk, and like even with a baby like you can, you know, take him in the stroller and like walk around and just get out of like the basement for me, or like out of your house and like oh, there's a world like.
Yeah. And even without COVID, that feels that way a lot of times. It can feel very isolating and alone, and like I can't go anywhere, and like, you know, it's too uncomfortable. What if baby has to feed in public and all of that, like to actually push yourself to do some of those things.
Yeah, and like my husband's very much like, hey, like let's do this, and like he kind of like pushes me to do it, not in like a bad way, but just like we can do this, and like you're gonna be okay, and like stuff like that, and like he's really helpful in like getting, because I remember the first time we went on a walk with him and stuff, I was like, you have to pack this stuff and like make sure he has everything he needs, and like you know, because it's just like that feels really overwhelming, you know. Or it's like even if you're like alone, like asking if a friend wants to come and like help you to like get out of the house, you know, and like help you to get ready and think through what you need, and like go right after you feed. Like it's so funny because I'll be like, while I'm feeding, I'm like planning kind of my next in between feeds time. Where it's like, no, I don't think I have enough time, like, or like I don't want to go at this time, but like after the next feed, let's like plan to go on the walk. So then like beforehand, I'm like, I have the right clothes on, and like I'm in the right mental space, and like I've packed the bag already. So then you're like going right at instead of the same sleep thing where you're going right after the feed, so like you're not stressed that like he's gonna have to feed right away, you know, and you're not going too far that if like, oh, I think he's crying and he needs to feed, like you can just go home, you know, really quick. And like if you don't feel like doing it in public, you know, and also forcing yourself to kind of do it in public and just make it work, like, and not bringing, like, I remember Sarah, like when we went to a different park, and I was like, I'm gonna bring like milk that I've gotten from the Haka and the pump and stuff to breastfeed, and so I have all the options. And then like both you and Josh was kind of like, or you could just like plan to breastfeed. I was like, but I'm just like, it's like at a park, and like how am I gonna do it? And like and it's just like, well, I think you can do it. And it's like, if you don't have to fall back on the other thing, it's just like, okay, like I'm here, I'm gonna do it in a park, I'm gonna like keep it covered and have your partner help you or have a friend help you, of like, help me to make sure I keep it covered, you know, like, because if you're feeling like, I don't know, maybe I'm just gonna flip, like this is gonna fall down or something. But yeah, just kind of like thinking, like kind of pushing yourself to like do those things that you like to do, and that
and when you have the support around you, my tip is do it first with somebody else, because the more you do it now, like if you had to feed him by yourself out and about, you could do it. It may be a little overwhelming, but you absolutely could do it, versus in the beginning it's like, okay, will you help me with this? And okay, like,
can you grab me this?
Right, exactly. And like, oh shoot, now I'm feeding him and I need this. Like, it's just, it's a lot easier to do that and work your way in slowly to being really independent. The other thing is, if you don't have a partner, Like I know there's a lot of partner talk because that's her experience. She's had amazing support. She's an amazing partner. And so I would say some of those self-care things, this is something I talk about in session 1 of birth coaching, guys. And when I thought and I was putting together this process that's like, the goal is that you don't need anything else, that you will be as ready as humanly possible for this baby, you know, other than maybe breastfeeding. And even then I set you up with breastfeeding people. And so it's like, when I'm thinking about what do you need, what's the foundation of the whole thing? Birth, labor, postpartum, breastfeeding is honestly self-care and mindfulness of like, let me slow down and let's talk about self-care. What do you do now that works for you? What, and like, because we're not creating a new human being, right? We're actually still your same person. You've just added this new role onto your life and you're trying to work that into who you are now. But it's easy to be like, oh, all is lost. When that's not true at all. Not as all is lost. All is still actually fully there. And if you can identify the things like bath, I think that's a perfect example. If you're a bath taker now, expect to maintain that. Have a lot of Epsom salts available for you and, you know, and be ready to take some baths and plan for that into your routine. If you're a single mom, put the baby in a box. You know, a box, a bassinet, a sleeper, a DockATot, or whatever, and like feed your baby, burp your baby, change your baby, swaddle your baby, throw your baby down to sleep, and zone out in the bath. And if they cry, take a deep breath, dry yourself off, and pick them up eventually. You know, like these aren't, I feel like a lot of these things in the postpartum period can feel very overwhelming, and a lot of it is just giving yourself that extra grace and that push to just figure it out and try it. There's no right or wrong way, guys. That's like the poop thing. He poops on you. Who cares?
And like the mental battle, because like even with like letting Sarah or letting my mom take him and like, or they just like are bonding with him upstairs and like I'm like here. Sometimes it's like oh, baby's not here. I wonder if he's okay. And like maybe he should be with me. And like I want him to be with me. And like, you know, you have like this kind of like, I want him to be with me, but I don't because like I want my own time for a moment, but like also I want him to be with me. And like just like, okay, like he's fine. Like if you trust the person, like just trust the person. Like, if you don't trust them, then don't give him your baby. You know what I mean? Like
fair, good point.
You know, and like just trust that like the people around you also can like take care of the baby, and like take a deep breath and like enjoy the moments where it's like, yeah, I'm not with him, you know, in this moment, so I'm gonna like do something for me, and like that's okay. And like even like with COVID and stuff too, it's been like a mental thing of like gratitude because like there's a lot of things that COVID has taken from everyone, you know, and like a lot of loss with that. And so just like, okay, what am I grateful for? Like, and like mentally, like, okay, I'm grateful for these things. And like, yeah, I would have, for instance, I really prefer that he not be on the belly light right now and not have jaundice because this is really stressful. But like, he is healthy. I'm healthy. I'm recovering. I like, you know, this and that thing. I have all this support or whatever it is. Or if you don't have support, like, you know,
I have boobs that work.
Yeah, like milks come in. Yay! Like being grateful for the things that are going well, and then like, okay, take a deep breath for the things that aren't, and like keep trying different things. If it's not working for you, try something else.
Amazing. I love it. Well, I feel like that is plenty,
Yeah,
guys.
this is so long again.
So
Thank
long.
you if you're here, and thank you for watching this whole thing. It's so funny. Like Sarah said this at the beginning, but like I'm like, who am I that like anyone cares about my birth story or a postpartum story? It's like whatever. Like just like a normal person. So it's super sweet that people are caring and wondering about it and want to learn from it, and like that's the whole point of why we're both here. And like I'm not a super huge social media person, but like I hope that you can like learn something from it, and like that's why I'm like, yeah, like let's do it, because it's like you don't know what you don't know, and like until you've experienced it, like how are you supposed to be prepared for it? And like so I just hope that something out of this is like helpful for you and you can take it away for your experience.
Yeah. And it would be really fun for us if you let us know what that is. We are like, I don't think you guys understand. We literally like sit around once it's posted and we're like, oh, this comment came in and look, somebody like labored till 9 centimeters. I do this all the time with all the videos, guys. So if there was something you found super helpful today, feel free to throw it in the comment box now, or once the video is officially posted for future watching, you can post it there and we will see it. We will go back and celebrate with you of all the things that you're learning. I also hope this was super helpful to you. If you want more from me, you've probably heard my spiel, but I'll tell you it again. You can go over to bundlebirth.com. I will put a bunch of stuff in the description box down below. So my website, my Amazon list, the link to Alyssa Berlin for the afterbirth plan class. Go over there and take that. I also have a promo code. I can't remember how much off you get, but you get a discount if you use the promo code. There's Goldilocks are down there, lots of other fun things. So check out the description box down below, especially once this is officially posted. And then I think this is our last time going live because I leave on Tuesday and I'm gonna cry just thinking about it.
We got there.
But this is our last live together for now until she has another baby. And so thank you guys so much for being here. If you want more from me, you have those links, but also let me know if you want other lives. I am considering maybe adding more birth stories because you guys have been so loving her birth story, maybe talking to previous clients and or current clients about coming on and sharing their birth story live with you guys as well. Also, you can follow me on Instagram for more over there. We'll be doing stories. I have the highlight over there, all the things. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and, wow, that was awkward. Flex and flow, and I will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys.